The sun was setting over Fifth Avenue, casting golden rays across the polished glass windows of one of the most exclusive boutiques in New York City. Inside, the air carried the faint scent of expensive perfumes mixed with the quiet hum of soft, jazz music playing in the background. Shoppers moved gracefully through the aisles, their footsteps muffled by plush carpets. It was a place where elegance reigned supreme, where people came not just to buy but to experience luxury. Lisa Monroe stepped into the store, her presence commanding yet understated. She wore a tailored navy blue dress that hugged her figure, perfectly, paired with simple pearl earrings and black heels. Her handbag, though modest in design, looked like it belonged on the arm of someone who understood quality. Lisa exuded confidence, her movements deliberate as she scanned the room. This wasn't her first time in such an environment. She had spent years navigating spaces like this, both personally and professionally. But today, something felt different. Almost. Immediately after she entered, a tall man in a dark uniform approached her. His name tag read Carl, and his expression gave away little warmth. He stood a few feet away, arms crossed, eyes narrowing slightly as he studied her from head to toe. Carl was known among the staff for his strictness. He prided himself on keeping order in the store, ensuring that only those who truly belonged were allowed inside. To him, this meant making quick judgments based on how people looked. "Can I help you?" Carl asked, his tone clipped. There was no smile, no warmth, just a directness that bordered on rudeness. Lisa turned to face him, her eyebrows raised slightly in surprise. "Hello," she said calmly. "I'm just browsing." Carl didn't move. Instead, he tilted his head, still, staring at her as if trying to place her somewhere in his mental checklist of acceptable customers. Finally, he spoke again. "Do you know what kind of prices we have here?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy and loaded. Lisa blinked once, then twice before responding. "I assume they're high," she said evenly, her voice steady despite the tension rising within her. "That's why I'm here, to see what's available." For a moment, Carl seemed taken aback by her composure. Most people would have faltered under his gaze or become defensive. But Lisa didn't flinch. She simply stood there, meeting his eyes without hesitation. Still, Carl couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong. Maybe it was her natural poise, which some might mistake for arrogance. Or maybe it was something else entirely, something rooted in assumptions he hadn't even realized he was making. "Well," Carl said finally, leaning back slightly but keeping his arms crossed, "just make sure you don't touch anything, unless you're serious about buying." Lisa nodded once, choosing not to engage further. She knew better than to argue with someone so set in their ways. Instead, she walked past him, heading toward a display of designer handbags near the center of the store. Each bag was more exquisite than the last, crafted from fine leather and adorned with intricate details. Lisa ran her fingers lightly along the edge of one, admiring its craftsmanship. She could feel Carl's eyes on her, watching her every move. She examined the bags. Another employee approached, a young woman named Rachel. Unlike Carl, Rachel greeted Lisa with genuine enthusiasm. "Hi there," she said brightly. "Are you looking for anything specific? We've got some new arrivals this week." Lisa smiled at her, grateful for the friendly interaction. "Thank you," she replied. "I'm actually just exploring right now. These are beautiful, though," Rachel beamed. "They really are. Let me know if you need help with anything." With that, Rachel left Lisa to continue browsing. But as soon as she was gone, Carl appeared again, hovering nearby. He didn't say anything this time, but his presence was unmistakable. Lisa could feel his skepticism radiating off him like heat from the pavement on a summer day. It annoyed her, but she tried to push it aside. After all, she hadn't come here to cause trouble. She had come because she was considering a partnership. With the boutique Novatech Industries, the company Lisa led as CEO, specialized in cutting-edge technology designed to enhance retail experiences. Their latest innovation involved AI-driven systems that could predict customer preferences and streamline shopping processes. If implemented correctly, these tools could revolutionize the way stores operated, increasing efficiency while improving customer satisfaction. The boutique on Fifth Avenue was one of several potential partners Lisa was evaluating, and she wanted to get a first-hand look at how they conducted business. But Carl's behavior made her question whether this was the right fit. As she moved, from section to section examining jewelry, scarves, and shoes, Carl followed her like a shadow. At one point, when Lisa stopped to admire a pair of stilettos, Carl cleared his throat loudly enough to draw her attention. "You sure you can afford those?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension. Lisa froze, her hand hovering above the shoe. Slowly she turned to face him, her jaw tightening ever so slightly. For a brief second, anger flickered in her chest, threatening to boil over. But she took a deep breath, reminding herself that losing her temper wouldn't solve anything. "I appreciate your concern," she said coolly. "But I assure you my finances aren't your responsibility." Carl frowned, clearly unaccustomed to being spoken to like that. Before he could respond, Lisa added, "If you'll excuse me, I'd like to finish my shopping in peace." She returned her focus to the shoes, refusing to let him distract her any further. Yet even as she forced herself to concentrate, Lisa couldn't ignore the growing frustration bubbling inside her. Who did this man think he was? Did he really believe he could judge her worth based solely on her appearance? Minutes passed, and Lisa decided it was time to speak with someone higher up. She approached the counter where the store manager, Mark, was assisting another customer. When he noticed her waiting, he excused himself and turned to greet her. "How may I assist you?" Mark asked politely, his demeanor professional. Lisa explained that she was interested in discussing a potential collaboration with Novatech Industries. Mark's eyes widened slightly, recognizing the name of the prestigious tech firm. He began apologizing profusely, likely assuming she had already encountered issues during her visit. However, before he could say much more, Carl interrupted. "This lady's causing problems," Carl declared, pointing at Lisa. "She needs to leave." Mark looked confused, glancing between Carl and Lisa. "What seems to be the issue?" "She doesn't belong here," Carl insisted, his voice rising. "She's wasting everyone's time." Lisa folded her arms across her chest, her patience wearing thin. "Actually," she said firmly, "I'm the CEO of Novatech Industries, and I'm here because I'm considering partnering with this store. So, perhaps you should reconsider your attitude." There was a long pause as the weight of her words sank in. Mark's mouth dropped open and Carl's face turned pale. Neither of them had expected this revelation. For a moment, the entire store seemed to hold its breath. Finally, Mark stammered, "Ms. Monroe, please accept my sincerest apologies. I had no idea." "It's quite all right," Lisa interrupted, her tone clipped. "But I do expect better treatment moving forward. Now, shall we discuss business?" And with that, Lisa took control of the situation, leaving Carl standing speechless behind her. Though outwardly composed, she couldn't deny the sting of his earlier remarks. But she also knew that moments like this were opportunities, not just for her but for others who might find themselves in similar situations. Little did Carl realize, his actions had set off a chain of events that would change everything. For him, for the boutique, and perhaps even for the industry itself. The atmosphere in the boutique shifted dramatically after Lisa's declaration. The once calm and luxurious space now felt tense, as if an invisible storm cloud had settled over it. Mark, the store manager, scrambled to regain control of the situation. His face was flushed, his hands fidgeting nervously as he tried to figure out what to say next. Carl, on the other hand, stood frozen, his earlier confidence replaced by a mix of shock and embarrassment. He hadn't expected Lisa to reveal her identity, or worse, for her to be someone so important. "Ms. Monroe," Mark began again, his voice trembling slightly. "I truly apologize for this misunderstanding. Please allow me to make things right." Lisa didn't respond immediately. She simply stared at him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, the only sound in the store was the soft hum of the jazz music playing in the background. Then, with a slow nod, Lisa finally spoke. "Thank you, Mark. I appreciate your willingness to address this. However, I must admit, my experience Here today has been less than ideal. Mark winced at her words, knowing full well they were an understatement. He glanced briefly at Carl, who was still standing awkwardly nearby, before turning back to Lisa. I understand, Ms. Monroe, and I assure you we take situations like this very seriously. If you'd like, we can discuss how we can move forward, in a way that aligns with your expectations. Lisa considered his offer for a moment. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, but she also knew that actions spoke louder than words. Still, she decided to give him the benefit of the doubt, no, all right, she said evenly. Let's talk about the partnership first. Once we've addressed that, we can revisit this incident. Mark nodded eagerly, relieved that Lisa was willing to continue the conversation. He gestured toward a private, seating area near the back of the store, where they could speak without interruptions. As they walked, Lisa noticed Rachel, the friendly employee from earlier, watching them curiously. When their eyes met, Rachel offered a small, apologetic smile. Lisa returned it, appreciating the gesture. At least not everyone in the store had treated her poorly. Once they were seated, Mark launched into an explanation of the boutique's current operations. He described their customer base, their most popular products, and their plans for future growth. Lisa listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions and offering insights based on her expertise in technology. Despite the rocky start to their meeting, she found herself intrigued by the boutique's potential. It was clear that the store had a strong foundation. It just needed some modernization to keep up with changing consumer trends. As they discussed the partnership, Lisa couldn't help but notice how different Mark's demeanor was compared to Carl's. Where Carl had been confrontational and dismissive, Mark was respectful and eager to learn. It made her wonder how much influence Carl really had within the store, and whether his behavior was indicative of a larger issue. When the conversation turned to Novatech's AI-driven systems, Lisa explained how they could transform the shopping experience. Imagine a system that predicts exactly what your customers want before they even know it themselves, she said, her passion for her work shining through. It would save time, increase sales, and create a more personalized experience for everyone who walks through your doors. Mark seemed genuinely impressed. That sounds incredible, he admitted. But I have to ask, how do we ensure that the technology doesn't replace the human touch? Our customers value personal interactions almost as much as the products themselves. Lisa nodded, acknowledging his concern. That's a valid point, she replied. Our goal isn't to replace people, but to enhance their abilities. Think of it as a tool that empowers your staff to provide better service. For example, if a customer walks in looking for a gift, the system could instantly suggest options based on their preferences. That gives your employees more time to focus on building relationships rather than searching for items. Mark mulled this over, clearly weighing the pros and cons. After a few moments, he smiled. You've given me a lot to think about, Ms. Monroe. I'll need to discuss this with my team, of course, but I believe there's real potential here. I'm glad to hear that, Lisa said, returning his smile. And I hope we can work together to make it happen. With the business discussion temporarily concluded, Lisa decided it was time to address the elephant in the room. She leaned forward slightly, her tone shifting from professional to firm. Now, let's talk about what happened earlier. I assume you're aware of how Carl treated me when I first arrived? Mark's smile faded, replaced by a look of discomfort. Yes, Ms. Monroe. I witnessed part of it, and I've already spoken to Carl about his behavior. I can assure you it won't happen again. Lisa raised an eyebrow. While I appreciate your assurance, I think it's important to dig deeper. This wasn't just a one-time mistake. It was a reflection of bias, and if left unchecked, it could harm not only your reputation but also your bottom line. Mark nodded slowly, his expression growing serious. You're absolutely right. We pride ourselves on providing exceptional service to all our customers, regardless of who they are. Clearly, we fell short today, and I take full responsibility for that. Lisa studied him for a moment, trying to gauge whether his words were sincere. She decided to give him another chance. Good, because I'd hate to see a promising partnership derailed by something like this. Moving forward, I'd recommend implementing mandatory training for your staff, not just on customer service, but on recognizing and addressing unconscious biases. Mark agreed immediately. Consider it done. I'll arrange for a workshop as soon as possible. Satisfied with his response, Lisa stood up, signaling the end of their meeting. Thank you for your time, Mark. I look forward to hearing from you soon. As Lisa prepared to leave, Carl suddenly appeared, his face pale and his hands clenched tightly at his sides. Ms. Monroe, he began hesitantly, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry for how I acted earlier. I didn't mean to offend you. Lisa turned to face him, her expression neutral. For a moment, she said nothing, simply staring at him as if weighing his apology. Finally, she spoke. Thank you for saying that, Carl. I accept your apology, but remember, actions matter more than words. If you truly regret what happened, prove it by treating every customer with the respect they deserve. Carl nodded vigorously, his eyes wide with determination. I will, Ms. Monroe, I promise. With that, Lisa walked out of the boutique, her heels clicking against the tiled floor. Outside, the city buzzed with life, its energy a stark contrast to the tension she had left behind. As she stepped onto the sidewalk, she pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Angela, she said when her best friend answered. You won't believe what just happened. Over the next hour, Lisa recounted the entire incident to Angela, from Carl's rude remarks to her decision to use the situation as an opportunity for change. Angela listened intently, occasionally interjecting with exclamations of disbelief or outrage. That's unbelievable, Angela exclaimed at one point. How dare he treat you like that, especially in a place like that? I know, Lisa replied, her tone calm despite the lingering frustration. But honestly, Angela, I'm more concerned about what this says about society as a whole. People like Carl aren't rare, they're everywhere. And until we start addressing these biases head-on, nothing will change. Angela sighed. You're right, of course, but still you shouldn't have had to deal with that. You're the CEO of a major company, for heaven's sake. Lisa chuckled softly. True. But maybe that's exactly why I did have to deal with it. Sometimes these moments are opportunities in disguise. If I can use this to push for meaningful change, not just in that store but across the industry, then it'll be worth it. Angela paused, then said, You always find a way to turn negatives into positives, don't you? It's not about turning negatives into positives, Lisa corrected gently. It's about refusing to let negativity win. That's how progress happens. After hanging up with Angela, Lisa spent the rest of the evening reflecting on the day's events. She knew that partnerships like the one she was proposing came with risks, especially when working with companies that might not share her values. But she also believed in the power of education and accountability. If Novatech could help businesses like the boutique become more inclusive and equitable, then perhaps incidents like the one she experienced would become a thing of the past. She sat in her apartment. Gazing out at the glittering skyline, Lisa allowed herself a small smile. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready for the challenge. After all, she had spent years breaking barriers and proving doubters wrong. This was just another step on that journey, a step toward creating a world where everyone, regardless of their appearance, could walk into any store and be treated with dignity and respect. The next morning, the boutique on Fifth Avenue was buzzing with whispers. News of Lisa Monroe's visit had spread like wildfire among the staff, and everyone seemed to have an opinion about what had happened. Some were outraged by Carl's behavior, while others felt sympathy for him, knowing how intimidating it must have been to confront someone as powerful as Lisa. But one thing was certain, no one could stop talking about it. Mark, the store manager, arrived early to prepare for a meeting with the boutique's corporate headquarters. He had already drafted a report detailing the incident, careful to include both his observations and Lisa's concerns. As he reviewed the document, he couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. The truth was, he should have seen this coming. Over the years, there had been murmurs about Carl's attitude, but Mark had always brushed them off, assuming Carl was just doing his job. Now he realized how wrong he had been. By mid-morning, the corporate team had arrived, a group of executives dressed in sharp suits who carried themselves with an air of authority. They gathered in the store's private conference room, their faces serious as they listened to Mark recount the events of the previous day. When he finished speaking, there was a long silence. Finally, one of the executives, a woman named Patricia, spoke up. "This is unacceptable," she said firmly. "We pride ourselves on providing exceptional service to all our customers. What happened here goes against everything we stand for." Another executive, a man named Robert, nodded in agreement. "Not to mention the potential damage to our reputation. If word gets out about this, and let's face it, it probably will, we could lose customers. People don't tolerate discrimination anymore." Mark swallowed hard, feeling the weight of their disapproval. "I understand, and I take full responsibility. I've already spoken to Carl, and he's aware of the seriousness of his actions. In addition, Ms. Monroe suggested implementing mandatory training for our staff to address unconscious biases. I think that's a good place to start." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "It's not just about training, Mark. We need to ensure that this kind of behavior doesn't happen again. That means holding people accountable, including Carl." Mark hesitated before responding. "Understood. I'll speak with HR about suspending Carl pending further review." The executives exchanged glances, clearly satisfied with his response. For the rest of the meeting, they discussed strategies to repair the boutique's image, including issuing a public apology and reaching out to Lisa directly to express their commitment to change. By the time the meeting ended, Mark felt a mix of relief and dread. While he was glad to have a plan in place, he knew the road ahead would be challenging. Meanwhile, Carl sat alone in the break room, staring blankly at the wall. His suspension had been announced earlier that morning, and the news had hit him like a punch to the gut. He had always prided himself on being tough and no nonsense, but now he felt anything but strong. Instead, he felt small, ashamed, and utterly lost. As he replayed the events of the previous day in his mind, Carl couldn't shake the memory of Lisa's calm yet piercing gaze. She hadn't yelled or argued when he insulted her. Instead, she had simply stated the truth in a way that left him speechless. And when she revealed who she was, the CEO of Novatech Industries, he had felt the ground shift beneath his feet. It wasn't just embarrassment he felt. It was something deeper, something he couldn't quite name. Later that afternoon, David, one of Carl's co-workers, stopped by the break room. Unlike Carl, David was known for his easygoing nature and willingness to help others. He slid into the chair across from Carl and gave him a sympathetic look. "Hey, man," David said gently. "How are you holding up?" Carl shrugged, avoiding eye contact. "Not great," he admitted. "I messed up big time, didn't I?" David sighed. "Yeah, you did. But maybe this is a chance to learn something. You know Novatech is hosting a diversity workshop next week? I thought about signing up, and I figured you might want to join me." Carl frowned. "A workshop, really? Do you think that's going to fix anything?" "It's a start," David replied. "Look, I'm not saying it's going to erase what happened, but it's better than sitting around feeling sorry for yourself. Plus, if you really want to make things right, this could be your opportunity." For a moment, Carl didn't respond. He stared down at his hands, which were clenched tightly in his lap. Then slowly he nodded. "All right," he said quietly. "I'll go." Across town, Lisa was preparing for a major announcement. After leaving the boutique, she had spent hours drafting a statement that addressed the incident without naming names. Her goal was to highlight the importance of inclusivity in retail, while also showcasing Novatech's commitment to driving positive change. By the time she finalized the document, she felt confident that it struck the right tone. The following day, Novatech released the statement online, accompanied by a video message from Lisa herself. In the video, she spoke directly to the camera, her voice steady and sincere. "At Novatech, we believe that technology has the power to bring people together," she began. "But technology alone isn't enough. True progress requires us to examine our own biases and work toward creating environments where everyone feels valued and respected." She went on to describe the partnership proposal with the boutique, emphasizing the importance of mutual respect in business relationships. Though she didn't mention the specific incident, her words resonated with audiences around the world. Within hours, the statement had gone viral, sparking conversations on social media about prejudice and accountability in the workplace. Back at the boutique, the staff watched the video during a mandatory team meeting. Rachel, who had initially greeted Lisa, felt a surge of admiration for her poise and determination. "She's amazing," Rachel said aloud, breaking the silence that followed the video. "After everything she went through, she still wants to help us improve." Mark nodded in agreement. "That's exactly why we need to take this seriously. Starting today, we're implementing new policies to ensure that every customer is treated fairly. And yes, that includes attending the diversity workshop Carl mentioned." Rachel glanced at Carl, who was sitting quietly in the corner of the room. His usual brash demeanor was gone, replaced by a quiet humility that surprised her. When the meeting ended, she approached him cautiously. "Hey, Carl," she said softly. "Are you okay?" Carl looked up, his expression guarded. "I'm working on it," he replied. "Thanks for asking." Rachel smiled faintly. "Just try to keep an open mind, all right? I think this could be good for all of us." Carl nodded, though he wasn't entirely convinced. Still, he appreciated her kindness. It was a reminder that not everyone viewed him as irredeemable. Over the next few days, Carl threw himself into preparing for the workshop. He read articles about unconscious bias, watched videos featuring experts in the field, and even reached out to a former coworker who had experience in diversity training. The more he learned, the more he realized how much he didn't know. It was humbling, but also eye-opening. When the day of the workshop finally arrived, Carl walked into the conference room feeling nervous, but determined. The space was filled with participants from various industries, all eager to learn. Carl took a seat near the back, hoping to blend in unnoticed. But as the facilitator introduced herself and began the session, he found himself drawn in by her words. "Bias isn't about being a bad person," the facilitator explained. "It's about recognizing patterns in our thinking that we may not even be aware of. The key is to acknowledge those patterns and challenge them." Carl listened, intently taking notes and participating in group discussions. At one point, the facilitator asked participants to share personal experiences related to bias. Most people hesitated, unsure whether to open up. But after a few moments, Carl raised his hand. I made a mistake recently," he began, his voice shaky. "I judged someone based on how they looked, and it turned out they were way more important than I realized. Not just professionally, but as a person. I hurt them, and I regret it." The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at him. For a moment, Carl feared he had said too much. But then, the facilitator smiled warmly. "Thank you for sharing that," she said. "It takes courage to admit when we're wrong. Remember, growth starts with awareness." As the workshop continued, Carl felt a sense of hope he hadn't experienced in years. For the first time, he believed he could change, not just for himself, but for the people he interacted with every day. And though he knew repairing the damage he had caused wouldn't be easy, he was ready to try. By the end of the session, Carl approached the facilitator to thank her. "This was really helpful," he said honestly. "I'm going to do better, I promise." The facilitator nodded, her expression kind. "I believe you will. Just remember, it's a journey, not a destination." With those words echoing in his mind, Carl left the workshop feeling lighter than he had in weeks. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he felt hopeful about it. The days following the workshop brought a mix of emotions for Carl. On one hand, he felt a renewed sense of purpose, a determination to prove that he was capable of change. On the other hand, he couldn't ignore the lingering skepticism from some of his co-workers at the boutique. Word had spread that Carl had attended the diversity training, and while a few people like Rachel seemed supportive, others kept their distance, unsure whether his efforts were genuine or just an act. Carl tried not to let it bother him. He reminded himself that earning back trust would take time, and he couldn't expect everyone to forgive him overnight. Still, there were moments when the weight of what he had done felt almost unbearable. Late at night, lying in bed, he replayed the incident with Lisa over and over again in his mind. Each time he cringed at his own words and actions, wishing he could turn back the clock and do things differently. During the day, Carl threw himself into his work, determined to show that he was serious about improving. He greeted every customer warmly, regardless of how they looked or dressed. He avoided making assumptions and instead asked open-ended questions to better understand their needs. It wasn't easy. Old habits die hard. But Carl pushed through, reminding himself of the lessons he had learned during the workshop. One afternoon, as Carl was restocking shelves near the entrance, a familiar figure walked into the store. His heart skipped a beat when he realized it was Lisa Monroe. She looked as elegant as ever, her presence commanding yet calm. For a moment Carl froze, unsure of what to do. Then, taking a deep breath, he stepped forward. "Ms. Monroe," he said, his voice steady despite the nerves bubbling inside him. "I'm glad to see you again." Lisa turned to face him, her expression neutral. "Hello, Carl," she replied. "How are you?" "I'm doing better," Carl admitted. "I wanted to thank you for everything. Your suggestion about the workshop really helped me see things differently. I've been working on being more mindful of my actions, and I hope you can see that." Lisa studied him for a moment, her eyes searching his face for sincerity. Finally, she nodded. "I appreciate your honesty, Carl. Change isn't easy, but it's clear you're putting in the effort. That's commendable." Her words sent a wave of relief crashing over Carl. Though her tone remained measured, there was a hint of warmth in her voice that gave him hope. Encouraged, he continued, "If it's all right with you, I'd like to keep learning. Maybe someday I can help. Others avoid making the same mistakes I did." Lisa smiled faintly, clearly touched by his determination. "That's a noble goal, Carl. And if you ever need guidance, don't hesitate to reach out. We all have room to grow." With that, she turned her attention to browsing the store, leaving Carl standing there, a mixture of gratitude and resolve washing over him. He knew he still had a long way to go, but Lisa's acknowledgement of his progress meant more to her self-esteem than any apology or explanation ever could. Meanwhile, Lisa's focus shifted back to the partnership proposal between Novatech and the boutique. After the corporate team's initial hesitation, they had agreed to move forward with discussions, recognizing the potential benefits of integrating advanced technology into their operations. Mark, the store manager, played a key role in facilitating these talks, ensuring that both sides stayed aligned on goals and expectations. During one of their meetings, Mark brought up the topic of accountability. "We've implemented new policies to address bias," he explained. "Employees are required to attend regular training sessions, and we've established a system for customers to provide feedback anonymously. Our goal is to create a culture where everyone feels respected and valued." Lisa listened carefully, nodding in approval. "Those are important steps," she said. "But remember, policies alone aren't enough. True change requires consistent effort and leadership. If your team sees you modeling the behavior you want to encourage, they'll be more likely to follow suit." Mark took her advice to heart, realizing that his role extended beyond managing day-to-day operations. He began leading by example, treating every customer and employee with kindness and respect. When challenges arose, he addressed them head-on, fostering open communication and collaboration among his staff. As the partnership progressed, Lisa noticed subtle improvements in the boutique's atmosphere. Employees seemed more engaged and customers appeared happier. Even small gestures like offering complimentary refreshments or remembering repeat shoppers' names made a noticeable difference. It was proof that even minor changes could have a significant impact when done thoughtfully. One evening, after a particularly productive meeting, Lisa decided to celebrate with Angela, her best friend. They met at a cozy cafe downtown, where Lisa recounted the latest developments over cups of hot tea. "It sounds like things are moving in the right direction," Angela said, stirring sugar into her drink. "Do you think the boutique will actually stick to their promises this time? Lisa shrugged slightly. Only time will tell. But I believe they're sincere. Mark has shown real commitment to making things better, and some of the employees seem genuinely invested too. Of course, there will always be bumps along the way, but I think they're willing to put in the work. Angela smiled. That's great to hear. And what about Carl? Have you seen him since the workshop? Lisa nodded. Yes, actually. He approached me today at the store. He apologized again and shared how much he's learned from the training. I could tell he meant it. It wasn't just lip service. That takes guts, Angela remarked. Not everyone would admit they were wrong, especially after something so public. Maybe there's hope for him after all. Lisa agreed. I think so too. Redemption isn't easy, but it's possible. And if Carl can turn things around, maybe others will follow his lead. Their conversation drifted to lighter topics as they enjoyed their tea, but Lisa's thoughts kept returning to the bigger picture. The incident at the boutique had started as a personal affront, but it had grown into something far greater, an opportunity to drive meaningful change. Through Novatech's partnership, she hoped to set an example for other businesses, showing them that inclusivity wasn't just a moral imperative, it was also good for business. Back at the boutique, Carl continued to rebuild his reputation. He made a point of checking in with colleagues like Rachel, asking for feedback on his interactions with customers and offering assistance whenever needed. Slowly but surely, people began to soften toward him, recognizing the sincerity of his efforts. One day, as Carl was helping a young mother find a gift for her daughter, Rachel approached him with a smile. "You've been doing great, Carl," she said. "I can tell you're trying, and it shows." Carl felt a surge of pride at her words. "Thanks, Rachel. That means a lot coming from you." Rachel hesitated for a moment before adding, "You know, Ms. Monroe stopped by earlier. She mentioned how impressed she was with your progress. Looks like you're making a real impression." Carl's heart swelled with gratitude. "Really? She said that?" Rachel nodded. "Yeah. Keep it up, okay? You're proving that people can change." As Rachel walked away, Carl stood there for a moment, letting her words sink in. For so long, he had defined himself by his toughness and authority, believing that those traits made him effective at his job. Now, he was beginning to understand that true strength came from humility and empathy, the ability to recognize mistakes and strive to do better. Later that evening, as Carl locked up the store and headed home, he reflected on how far he had come. The road ahead was still uncertain, filled with challenges and opportunities alike. But for the first time in a long time, he felt hopeful, not just for himself, but for the possibility of creating a world where everyone, regardless of who they were, could walk into any space and feel welcomed and respected. And though he knew he couldn't undo the past, he vowed to keep moving forward, one step at a time. The partnership between Novatech and the boutique officially launched a few weeks later. It was a quiet but significant milestone, marked by a small ceremony attended by key members of both teams. Lisa Monroe stood at the center of it all, her presence commanding yet approachable as she addressed the group. "Today marks the beginning of something special," she said, her voice steady and warm. "This isn't just about technology or business. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels valued. Together, we can set a standard for what retail should look like in the future." Her words resonated deeply with those in attendance. Mark, the store manager, nodded along earnestly, his expression reflecting both pride and determination. Carl, who had been invited to attend, stood quietly near the back of the room, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. He didn't expect to play a major role in the partnership, but he appreciated being included, even if only as an observer. After the ceremony, Lisa took a moment to speak individually with some of the staff. When she reached Carl, she offered him a small smile. "How are you finding everything?" she asked. Carl hesitated before responding, unsure how much to share. "It's different," he admitted finally. "I'm still learning, but I think I'm getting better at seeing things from other people's perspectives." "That's good to hear," Lisa replied. "Change starts with awareness. and it sounds like you're on the right path." Her encouragement gave Carl a boost of confidence. Though he knew he wasn't perfect and likely never would be, he felt reassured that his efforts were noticed. As Lisa moved on to speak with others, Carl lingered for a moment, watching her interact with the team. There was something about her demeanor that inspired trust, a quiet strength that made people want to follow her lead. Over the next several weeks, the boutique underwent a transformation. Novatech's AI-driven systems were integrated seamlessly into daily operations, enhancing the shopping experience for customers while empowering employees to provide better service. The system analyzed customer preferences in real time, suggesting personalized recommendations based on past purchases and browsing history. For shoppers, it felt less like being sold to and more like being understood. Employees quickly adapted to the new tools, thanks in part to training sessions led by Lisa's team. These sessions weren't just about technology, they also emphasized empathy and communication skills, reinforcing the importance of treating every customer with respect. Carl attended each session diligently, taking notes and asking thoughtful questions. His dedication did not go unnoticed. Rachel often joked that he was becoming the poster child for improvement. One afternoon, Carl found himself assisting a customer who seemed particularly indecisive. She wandered through the store, picking up items only to put them back moments later. Normally, this might have frustrated Carl, but instead he approached her with patience. "Can I help you find anything specific?" he asked gently. The woman looked up, surprised by his kindness. "Oh, I'm just looking," she said, "but nothing seems quite right." Carl smiled. "That's okay. Sometimes it takes time to figure out what you're looking for. Let me know if you'd like any suggestions. I'd be happy to help." To his surprise, the woman brightened immediately. "Thank you," she said. "That's really sweet of you." By the end of their conversation, she had purchased 2 items and left the store smiling. As Carl watched her go, he felt a sense of accomplishment he hadn't experienced before. It wasn't about making a sale, it was about making someone feel seen and appreciated. Meanwhile, Lisa continued to monitor the partnership's progress, visiting the boutique regularly to ensure everything was running smoothly. During one of these visits, she pulled Mark aside for a private chat. "How are things going overall?" she asked. "Any challenges you're facing?" Mark thought for a moment before responding. "Honestly, it's been smoother than I expected. The staff has embraced the changes and customers seem happier too, but..." He paused, hesitant to bring up a sensitive topic. "But?" Lisa prompted. "Well, there's still some lingering skepticism about Carl," Mark admitted. "Not everyone trusts that he's changed. I've tried to reassure them, but old impressions die hard." Lisa nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. "It's understandable," she said. "People need time to see consistent behavior before they believe it's genuine. The best thing we can do is continue supporting him while holding him accountable." Mark agreed, grateful for her guidance. "Thanks, Lisa. Your perspective really helps." As they wrapped up their conversation, Lisa glanced across the store and spotted Carl assisting another customer. She couldn't deny the difference in him. His body language was open, his tone friendly. Whatever doubts others might have, Lisa believed Carl was sincere in his desire to improve. Later that evening, Lisa met with Angela for dinner at a trendy restaurant downtown. Over plates of pasta and glasses of wine, they discussed the latest developments in the partnership. "It sounds like things are going well," Angela said, twirling her fork absently. "Do you think the boutique will stick with the program long-term?" Lisa shrugged slightly. "I hope so. They've made incredible strides already, but sustaining change is the real challenge. If they keep prioritizing inclusivity and accountability, I think they'll succeed." Angela leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. "And what about Carl? Have you seen more of him since the launch?" Lisa nodded. "Yes, actually. He's been working hard to prove himself, not just to me, but to everyone. I think he understands now that redemption isn't a one-time event. It's a continuous process." "That's admirable," Angela remarked. "Not everyone would take ownership of their mistakes like that. Maybe he'll inspire others to reflect on their own biases." I hope so, Lisa replied. If this partnership can show businesses that inclusivity isn't just a moral obligation, but also a competitive advantage, then we'll have achieved something meaningful. Their conversation shifted to lighter topics as the meal progressed, but Lisa's thoughts kept returning to the bigger picture. The incident at the boutique had started as a personal affront, but it had evolved into an opportunity to drive systemic change. Through Novatech's partnership, she hoped to demonstrate that technology could be a force for good, not just in improving efficiency, but in fostering connection and understanding. Back at the boutique, Carl ended his shift feeling cautiously optimistic. Though he still encountered skepticism from some co-workers, he focused on the positives: the customers who thanked him for his help, the colleagues who acknowledged his growth, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing he was doing better. Each day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities to prove himself. As he walked home that evening, Carl reflected on how much his perspective had shifted. Once he had viewed his job as a means of enforcing rules and maintaining order. Now, he saw it as a chance to make a difference, to create moments of joy and belonging for the people who entered the store. It wasn't always easy, but it was worth it. When he arrived home, Carl sat down at his kitchen table and opened the notebook he had started during the diversity workshop. Inside were pages filled with reflections, goals, and reminders of the lessons he had learned. Tonight, he added a new entry. Change is hard, but it's possible. Every interaction is a chance to do better. Keep listening, keep learning, and keep growing. As he closed the notebook and leaned back in his chair, Carl allowed himself a small smile. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, he felt hopeful, not just for himself, but for the possibility of creating a world where everyone, regardless of who they were, could walk into any space and feel welcomed and respected. And though he knew he couldn't undo the past, he vowed to keep moving forward, one step at a time. Months had passed since the partnership between Novatech and the boutique officially launched, and the changes were undeniable. The store had become a model of inclusivity and innovation, blending cutting-edge technology with human-centered service. Customers raved about their experiences, praising the personalized attention they received and the seamless shopping process. Employees, too, felt more empowered than ever, equipped with tools that allowed them to focus on building genuine connections rather than scrambling to meet quotas. Lisa Monroe visited the boutique often to check on its progress. But this time, her arrival was different. She wasn't there for a formal meeting or evaluation, she simply wanted to browse. Walking through the doors, she noticed immediately how much the atmosphere had transformed. Gone was the tense energy that had once filled the space. In its place was a warm, inviting vibe where everyone seemed genuinely happy to be there. Carl spotted Lisa almost immediately. He hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to approach her, but then decided to take the initiative. "Ms. Monroe," he said warmly as he approached. "Welcome back." Lisa turned to face him, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Hello, Carl. It's good to see you again." "I hope you don't mind me saying this," Carl continued, his voice steady. "But it feels strange not having you here for a meeting. Just seeing you as a regular customer, it's nice." Lisa chuckled softly. "Well, I am a regular customer now. And I have to say, the improvements are impressive. You've all done amazing work." Carl nodded, though he looked slightly embarrassed by the compliment. "Thank you. We couldn't have done it without your guidance or your patience." Their conversation was brief but meaningful, leaving Lisa feeling satisfied with the progress Carl had made. As she moved deeper into the store, she couldn't help but notice how smoothly everything ran. Employees greeted customers with genuine enthusiasm, and the AI system worked quietly in the background, enhancing interactions without overshadowing them. It was exactly what Lisa had envisioned when she first proposed the partnership. Later that day, Lisa attended a major retail conference as a keynote speaker. The event brought together industry leaders from around the world, all eager to learn about the latest trends and innovations shaping the future of shopping. When Lisa stepped onto the stage, The audience erupted into applause, a testament to her growing influence in the field. "Thank you," Lisa began, her voice calm and confident. "Today I want to talk about something bigger than profits or technology. I want to talk about humanity, the heart of every business transaction, no matter how advanced our systems become." She went on to share the story of the boutique, framing it as an example of what could happen when companies prioritized inclusivity alongside innovation. While she didn't mention names, the parallels were clear, and the audience listened intently, captivated by her passion. "We live in a world where biases, conscious or unconscious, can create barriers," Lisa explained. "But these barriers aren't insurmountable. By acknowledging our mistakes and committing to growth, we can build spaces where everyone feels valued. That's not just good ethics, it's good business." Her words resonated deeply with the crowd, sparking conversations. Long after her speech ended, many attendees approached her afterward to express admiration for her vision, while others asked for advice on implementing similar changes in their own organizations. Lisa graciously answered each question, knowing that every step toward inclusivity mattered. Back at the boutique, Carl reflected on Lisa's speech later that evening. Mark had recorded the session and shared it with the team, encouraging everyone to watch. As Carl sat in the break room viewing the video, he felt a swell of pride, not because Lisa had singled him out, but because he recognized the role he had played in making her vision a reality. When the video ended, Rachel walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. Handing one to Carl, she smiled. "You must feel pretty proud, huh?" Carl took a sip of the coffee before responding. "I do, actually. Not because of me personally, but because of what we've accomplished together. Seeing Ms. Monroe speak like that, it reminded me why all of this matters." Rachel nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, it's inspiring. And honestly, Carl, you've come so far. People are starting to see that. Even those who doubted you at first are beginning to trust you." "That means a lot," Carl admitted. "It hasn't been easy, but I think I'm finally starting to understand what it means to truly serve someone, not just as a customer, but as a person." Rachel grinned. "Well, keep it up. You're setting a great example for the rest of us." As weeks turned into months, the boutique continued to thrive under the new system. Customer satisfaction ratings soared, and sales increased significantly. More importantly, the store became known as a place where everyone felt welcome, regardless of their background or appearance. Local media outlets highlighted the transformation, calling it a blueprint for modern retail. Mark credited much of the success to Lisa's leadership and vision. During a follow-up meeting with Novatech, he expressed his gratitude openly. "We wouldn't be where we are today without you," he told Lisa. "You didn't just give us tools, you gave us a purpose." Lisa smiled humbly. "The credit goes to your team. They embraced the changes and made them their own. That takes courage and commitment." Mark shook his head. "Still, we couldn't have done it without your guidance." "Thank you, Lisa, for everything." For Carl, life settled into a rhythm of growth and reflection. He still faced occasional reminders of his past mistakes, but he no longer let them define him. Instead, he used them as motivation to keep improving. His relationship with his coworkers grew stronger, built on mutual respect and shared goals. Even customers who had once avoided him now sought him out, trusting his recommendations and appreciating his kindness. One afternoon, as Carl helped a young man pick out a gift for his mother, Lisa walked into the store again. This time she didn't announce her presence. Instead, she wandered quietly through the aisles, observing the interactions around her. When Carl spotted her, he finished assisting the customer before approaching her. "You're sneaky," Carl joked lightly. "I almost didn't see you." Lisa laughed softly. "I didn't want to interrupt, you looked busy." "I was," Carl admitted, "but it's always good to see you. How's everything going?" "Better than ever," Lisa replied. "This place has become a shining example of what's possible when people commit to change. You should be proud." Carl felt a lump form in his throat. "Thank you, Ms. Monroe. That means a lot coming from you." They stood there for a moment, sharing a quiet understanding. Neither needed to say more. They both knew how far they'd come since that fateful day. In the months that followed, Lisa expanded Novatech's partnerships to other businesses, using the boutique as a case study for success. Her message remained consistent. Technology alone couldn't solve societal issues. It required empathy, accountability, and a willingness to grow. Through workshops, conferences, and public speaking engagements, she championed the importance of inclusivity in every industry. Meanwhile, Carl continued to evolve, not just as an employee but as a person. He volunteered to lead diversity training, sessions for new hires, sharing his journey openly and encouraging others to confront their own biases. Though he acknowledged that he would never be perfect, he believed wholeheartedly in the power of progress. One evening, as Carl locked up the boutique after closing hours, he paused to look around the empty store. The lights were dimmed, casting soft shadows across the polished floors and gleaming displays. For a moment, he allowed himself to reflect on everything that had happened. The mistakes, the lessons, the growth. Change is possible, he whispered to himself, repeating the mantra he had written in his notebook months earlier. Keep listening, keep learning, and keep growing. With that, Carl turned off the last light and stepped out into the night, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Though the road hadn't been easy, he knew he was moving in the right direction, not just for himself but for the countless others whose lives might be touched by the work he and others were doing. And somewhere, Lisa Monroe smiled, knowing that moments like these, small victories born from determination and humility, were proof that true change was within reach.